I have never met someone who is on the C-suite who has not felt imposter syndrome in each of their roles and in their current role, and particularly taking on something new. So remember that it is completely normal, but what makes the difference between someone who is successful is someone who can step back, acknowledge the emotion, but figure out a plan forward by finding the right information, the right skills, and the right knowledge, and develop themselves to move forward. Welcome to the YouTube channel for Catch. My name is Sam and I am the founder here at Catch. Unshakable confidence is the key to getting everything that you want in life and dating. So on this channel, we help you to build that unshakable confidence and become the most unstoppable version of you. If you want to work with us in any way, all of that information is in the description box below, including a free to enter competition with prizes of up to £250. Imposter syndrome. It's something that affects many of our clients and most people that we speak to. It can hold us back and stop us achieving our dreams and turn what could be a dream job into a nightmare. So how do we overcome it? Well, in this video, we're going to talk you through what imposter syndrome is, how imposter syndrome can show up, and most importantly, how to move through it so that you can achieve the things that you want, whether that's in your job, in your career, or in your relationships. So what is imposter syndrome? Imposter syndrome is where we don't feel good enough for the job or the career or the relationship that we're in. And because of that, we feel like an imposter and we can end up self-sabotaging or showing up with weird and wonky behaviours that get in our way and can stop us succeeding. So it's really important that we're able to identify imposter syndrome and be able to overcome or move through it so that we can achieve what we want to in that role, in that relationship, or in other areas of life. And how do we know if we're being impacted by imposter syndrome or it's something that we're suffering from? Well, as well as having those emotions of feeling not good enough, not worthy, or being stuck in a fear cycle, it can show up in 4 ways, and it's called the 4 Ps. The first is perfectionism. So because we don't feel good enough, we feel like we need to do everything perfectly to be worthy and to do a good job. And so rather than applying prioritization or being able to focus on what's important, we end up wanting to do a lot and wanting each task or activity that we do to be perfect. And that could hold us back because we can focus on the wrong things or put our energy into places that aren't as valuable or won't make as big an impact as others. The second P is procrastination. So because we're scared that we may not do a task or achieve an outcome as well as we want, we can delay making a start or delay taking a certain action that we are afraid of or think that we won't do well enough. So our fear paralyzes us and stops us from moving forward. And that links to the third P, which is paralysis. So we can get stuck in decision paralysis, not sure which way to go down or unable to make a decision. Or we can get stuck in paralysis of action, so we aren't able to move forward. And the fourth of these is people pleasing. So because we don't feel good enough for the role or the relationship or the friendship, we end up self-sacrificing, sacrificing our boundaries, overstepping, and imagining people as above us. So therefore, the only way that we can remain safe or succeed in that role or in that relationship is to suck up to somebody else and put them above us and get them on our side so that it's less about what we're doing and more about the relationships that we have, but not in a healthy way, in a self-sacrificing way that comes from fear and not from confidence. So that's the key denominator. Are you taking an action or not taking an action or delaying an action out of fear or because that's the right thing to do? And if you can identify that, you'll know whether it's imposter syndrome and a lack of confidence or whether it comes from a wise place. So how can we overcome imposter syndrome or move through it so that we can leave that fear behind or work through that fear and make the right decisions? Well, what is key is moving from a place of fear into a place of confidence. And what is our confidence made out of? It's made out of belief. And we can create that belief through building our beliefs internally and also taking actions which over time give us a result and then build our belief through experience. Now, we do have a separate video on how to build your beliefs internally if you're struggling with where to start, so we'll also link that down below and up above if you want to check that out first. Now we're going to go into specifics of tackling imposter syndrome. So first tip is to actually stop calling it imposter syndrome. Now, why do we say that? Well, as we explained at the start of this video, imposter syndrome is fear, it's insecurity, it's uncertainty that are stopping us moving forward or causing us to be perfectionist or people-pleasing in the way that we approach an action or a task or a role. That is perfectly normal. Feeling fear, particularly with a promotion or a new job or a new task, is normal. It's about how we move through it. So by saying that we have imposter syndrome, sometimes that can feel like a permanent issue. It's called a syndrome, so it can feel like a permanent badge we're putting on ourselves. And also it can make something as normal as fear feel abnormal in that, well, we feel like an imposter, how are we going to move through it? So firstly, stop calling it imposter syndrome and name what's going on. Is it fear? Is it lack of confidence? Is it lack of belief? Is it a perceived lack in ability or skills? Or is it because it's something new? And how is that showing up for you? Is that showing up through procrastination, paralysis, people-pleasing, or perfectionism? Which of those P's is it? Because if you can identify the behaviour and the feeling or the thoughts or lack of confidence or lack of belief that is driving that behaviour, we can then address that belief or start to take action. And as I said, that belief video is available to you. And to emphasise this point, as some who watch my channel will know, I also run a corporate consulting business working in strategy. So I often work in that business with chief executive officers, chief strategy officers, chief people officers. I have never met someone who is on the C-suite who has not felt imposter syndrome in each of their roles and in their current role, and particularly taking on something new. So remember that it is completely normal, but what makes the difference between someone who is successful is someone who can step back, acknowledge the emotion, but figure out a plan forward by finding the right information, the right skills, and the right knowledge, and develop themselves to move forward. So to be able to move forward out of that fear, the first thing we would recommend is to make a plan. So as we said, identify the emotion, identify the negative thoughts that you might be having, where you might have a lack of confidence and belief and how it's showing up, and then create a plan for how to overcome that or how to move through it. So are those negative thoughts because it's something new? Is it because of a perceived lack of knowledge or lack of skill? Or is it because you don't feel good enough or worthy internally? If it is a skill or a knowledge gap, create a plan to solve that. And perhaps that's learning from other members of the team. Perhaps that's bringing in external help. Perhaps that's getting coaching. Perhaps that is going on a training course, speaking to colleagues who have done a similar piece of work before. How can you start to fill that knowledge or skills gap and practice and learn until you feel confident in it? That's one route. Or if it's an inner belief or lack of belief and confidence, use that belief video to identify the negative belief that you have, which tends to be a doubt or a fear that regularly appears in your mind, and then affirm the opposite. So if it's I am not good enough, you can start to tell yourself every day, I am good enough. Or if you're telling yourself that you're not a good salesperson, you can start to tell yourself you are a good salesperson, alongside taking the action to learn and develop those skills. So learn from others around you, learn through formal training, or learning through trial and error. So first, make a plan as to how you're going to solve that lack of confidence. And as part of that, look at others who excel at that skill. What is the version of them that shows up? What behaviours or values or actions do they have that you don't feel like you have? What makes them great at that role? And then spend some time thinking about your strengths. So what are you brilliant at? And where might there be some transferable skills and behaviours over to this role or this skill that you're trying to become more confident in? And where are the gaps that need filling? So build on the strengths you already have, recognize the strengths you already have, get a clear picture in your mind of what good looks like from those around you and those you're inspired by, and put that plan into place. After you have that plan in place, remember why it is that you've been appointed to this role. Because if you're in a new role or a new situation that feels unfamiliar to you, there are going to be reasons why you're there and why you were selected. You went through an interview process, or you knew somebody, or you did well in your prior role. So remind yourself of all the reasons you got into this position in the first place and why you were selected, or why you may have got into that role, because that will build your confidence again as to what you bring. And it's shown through research through a company called Zenga Folkman, which is a global leadership firm, that the best leaders focus on 3 or 4 of their core strengths, where they're in the top 10 or 20% for those skills. And that's what makes them in the top tier of leaders. It's not being brilliant at everything. So remember your strengths, why you got into this relationship or role in the first place, and remind yourself of your successes plus the little wins along the way. So you may not be, let's take you in sales. You may not get into the role and sell hundreds of thousands within the first few weeks, but perhaps you've booked some meetings. Perhaps you got some good feedback from a client. Perhaps your boss listened into some of your sales calls and gave you good feedback. So remember why you got the position, and then start to mark the little wins which are along the way of your plan and to achieving the outcomes that you want. And to bring this to life with an example, I remember when I was about 26, I was going for a promotion at work, and that company at the time would promote you when you were ready. So there was promotion rounds every 6 months, but you weren't necessarily competing for a limited number of spots. It was just when you were ready, you would get promoted. And I was going for my first manager role, where you would manage projects, but also manage a team and sell work. And I was doing really well at leading projects and selling work, but I didn't have as much experience or confidence in team leadership. And so I was looking at other people around me who were also going for the same promotion. And there was one person in particular who was excellent at the team leadership. Everyone loved working with him. He was a natural leader. He inspired people. People looked up to him. And I remember looking at him and thinking, wow, I will not compare to that person. How will I ever get the promotion if I'm not on that level? And then I had a realization that I was really strong in 2 of the 3 areas needed. I was pretty good in the third. Let's focus on my 2 strengths and double down on those and do as well as I can, and try and get to as good a level I can on the team leadership. But I don't have to be the best. He has his strengths, I have my strengths. And what was really interesting was, as the promotion came around, I was really shocked to learn that I had been promoted and my colleague hadn't. And so I was comparing myself to someone who was excellent at one thing. And if I had shifted my focus to try and become as good as him in team leadership in a really short space of time, I probably would have taken my eye off the ball on what I was actually good at that point in life and missed that promotion. I probably wouldn't have got it. But because I kept my energy on what I was brilliant at and was able to show my performance overall based on those traits, I was promoted and he wasn't. So that's a real life example of where you have to be good enough in all of the skills to maybe get that promotion or that new job, but you don't need to be amazing in all of them. You have to double down on your strengths. So really think about, what are your strengths? What makes the biggest impact in this role or this career? And how can you hone those? And this also shows, don't be afraid to learn from those around you and be inspired by others, and work in a team or hire a team around you who complement you. So you might not be the best at something like team leadership, but maybe one of your peers or someone in your team is and can help you with that. And overall, you want a team that brings all the skills necessary for that team. You don't need to be everything. And this leads on to my next point about perfectionism. So perfectionism is one of the 4 ways that imposter syndrome can show up. And what I often see with clients is that they go into a new role or a new organisation or career, and because they're feeling insecure, they really want to prove themselves and show that they are good enough, and almost maintaining that facade or that external perception of others that they're doing a good job is more important than actually doing the good job. And what do I mean by that? When we want to prove ourselves, we can become so anxious and insecure and in this perfectionism place that we become defensive. We don't want to take feedback. We don't want to show any vulnerability. We don't want to let new ideas in. So because we want to appear as if we know everything and we're already brilliant at the job, we might come in and set this whole new strategy for the job or for the team based on our own insights, but we may not speak to colleagues about what they've experienced. We may not ask for feedback during our early weeks and months, or we may get trapped into this place of not taking action because we're not sure if it's going to meet these very high standards that we've set for ourselves. And that can mean that we actually don't do a good job because we're not moving forward, or we're moving forward without the full information, or we're not open to ideas from others who may have better ideas than us. So a mindset shift that we work on with clients when going into a new role is be open, be curious, and do as much learning as possible. Speak to those around you, get their ideas, do research online, maybe even speak to people that work for other companies in the same industry about what they're working on, so that you can formulate your strategy or your plan or what you're going to do in that role with as much knowledge as possible. And that's going to set you up much better because people also love to be asked their advice. So if you're asking your colleagues, your bosses, your team members for their ideas and feedback, they will feel respected and valued and appreciated in that role. And you're also more likely to be successful because you've got a range of ideas, a range of thoughts from people who maybe are more experienced in that area or have got a different way of looking at the world. So if you're struggling with really wanting to prove yourself, try and take the pressure off and instead lead with curiosity, openness, and wanting to learn. And then naturally the ideas will start to come to you, plus you will have the buy-in from those who you've brought along that journey and asked their opinion. Now, we hinted to this earlier on in the video, but our next recommendation is to seek feedback. So linked to this mindset of being open and curious, some people, when they're in a new role and they want to prove themselves or seem perfect, they're scared to ask for feedback because they're scared of any negative feedback or development feedback, and they would rather ignore it and pretend that what they're doing is perfect, or try and get better in the role before they ask for feedback, and therefore they're nervous. However, we can see that have the opposite impact, where if there's something that you could be doing better and you don't get that feedback early, you could carry on showing up in that way, or making certain decisions or taking certain actions or emulating behaviours which are preventing you doing the best that you can in that role. And so try and see feedback as a gift, as something to help you and help you become the best version of you in that role and perform as well as you can in that role as quickly as possible. So see it as a key aid and a part of the journey rather than a risk or something that feels scary. And on those days that you're maybe feeling less confident or less secure in yourself, make sure that you're writing down your successes. When you do those feedback sessions, write down all the things that you're doing brilliantly and focus on your strengths. If something goes well and you have an achievement that you're proud of, write that down. You can even keep a folder in your emails called successes and wins or good feedback. You can write it in a place in your work pads that you can refer to it. Make sure that you're taking the time to celebrate success, because when we're feeling fear, feeling imposter syndrome, not feeling confident, we can spend all of our energy focusing on what we're not doing well rather than doubling down on our strengths and our achievements. So make it a deliberate practice, perhaps even put it in your calendar once a week to write down what's gone well that week and things that could be even better if. So make sure you're getting into that rhythm with you and your team to celebrate success, celebrate learning, and celebrate those wins. And the final piece of advice for overcoming imposter syndrome is to regulate your nervous system and regulate your emotions. Now, I saw an interesting video recently saying that nervous system regulation is just being calm all the time. That isn't the case. Nervous system regulation is being able to come out of that fight or flight mode where you feel panicked and urgent, or You avoid a challenge completely. So you either go into overdrive and you feel like you need to fix something straight away, or you run away from it. And when you're in that place, you're not able to make the best, most logical decisions with all the information available to you because you're in that urgent place. So what regulation does is it brings you out of that fight or flight into more of a calm, rest and digest place. You can still feel your emotions. Anger and frustration is helpful to tell you where your boundaries are being crossed, or you could do better. And you're allowed to feel sad if something at work is challenging. However, it's about being able to process those emotions healthily, move through them, and then look at the problem objectively and say, okay, what are my options and how am I going to move forward? For example, if there's a tricky relationship with a colleague, rather than have a fight with them or avoid them, how can you sit down and have a productive conversation about what's been difficult and how to work together better, especially if your role and their role has to work together? Or if there are different solutions you're looking at from a technical perspective or a new process that you're bringing into your job, how do you get the right people into a room to look at the options and decide how to move forward? And perhaps you're attached to one idea or you like one idea, but being attached to it and hanging on to it and wanting to feel right in that idea being the one that's taken forward, perhaps that is what's getting you defensive and more into that fight or flight mode. So how can you take a step back and think, actually, what I'm trying to do is deliver a better service with a customer, or grow the business, or save money, or make something simpler for our team? How is the best way to do that? And it is rarely in that heightened emotional place. It's usually when we can bring ourselves back down and regulate. And you can do that through meditation, breath work, yoga, exercise. Again, I think we did a separate video on nervous system regulation. So if I can find the link to that, we'll put that down below. But look at ways that you can take some space from a challenge or a heightened emotion and think logically about, right, how can I move through that, or what are the options available to me? Because that will stop the fear and insecurity that comes with the imposter syndrome causing paralysis or procrastination or avoiding something difficult. It will help you move through it. And those are the leaders or the people who are unstoppable, the ones who can move through fear, build their confidence and address any challenges head on, and show themselves and their nervous system, look, this thing doesn't intimidate me. I might feel some fear, this might be challenging, but ultimately I'm stronger and I will develop the skill or the behaviour or the relationships that I need to move through and find a solution. So I hope that helped. If you've had an experience with imposter syndrome or something that's worked for you, I'd love to hear that down below. Or if you have any questions, feel free to drop those below as well. Thank you for liking, sharing, commenting and subscribing, and we'll see you in the next one. Thank you. Bye.